The sky above New Haven Colony burned crimson as Lieutenant Dominic Thorne sprinted through the chaos of Evacuation Zone 7. Plasma bolts from unknown vessels streaked across the atmosphere, turning the peaceful farming settlement into a war zone. His breath came in measured bursts as he coordinated his team's efforts through his neural comm. "Jensen, status on the civilian transports," he called out, ducking under a partially collapsed archway. "Last group boarding now, sir. But we've got incoming bogies, 3 clicks out." Dominic cursed under his breath. The attack had come without warning, no demands, no declaration of war, just devastating precision strikes that had crippled their defensive systems within minutes. Now, all they could do was evacuate as many civilians as possible before the second wave hit. "Lieutenant." The call came from Private Rodriguez. "We're picking up a distress signal from the research complex. Life signs, but they're fading fast." Dominic checked his tactical display. The research complex was in the opposite direction from the evacuation ships, and the enemy fighters were closing in. Protocol dictated they should fall back, protect the majority. But those life signs. "Hold the line here. I'm going in," he decided, already changing course. His augmented reality display outlined the safest path through the burning buildings, but safe was relative when half the colony was on fire. The research complex loomed ahead, its typically pristine white walls now scarred and crumbling. Dominic's sensors picked up the life signs, weak, but persistent, coming from the lower levels. He navigated through fallen debris and sparking equipment, following the signal to its source. What he found stopped him in his tracks. In a sealed containment chamber, partially protected from the devastation, lay an unconscious figure. Her skin had an opalescent sheen that shifted colors with each shallow breath, and delicate, crystalline structures grew from her temples like natural crown. She was definitely not human. Dominic's training kicked in before his surprise could freeze him. Whether human or alien, someone needed help. He accessed the chamber's emergency release, and the protective field dissipated with a hum. The alien woman's eyes fluttered open as he approached, they were like captured galaxies, swirling with points of light. "Help, please," she whispered in perfect English, though her voice seemed to echo in his mind as much as his ears. A violent explosion rocked the building. Dominic's tactical display screamed warnings, the structure was becoming unstable. He gently lifted the alien woman, noting how surprisingly light she was despite her tall frame. "I've got you," he assured her, already plotting their escape route. "Just stay with me." They had made it halfway to the exit when his sensors detected the incoming missile. Time seemed to slow as Dominic's enhanced reflexes took over. The alien woman was still weak, she wouldn't survive the blast. Without hesitation, he turned, shielding her with his body as the world erupted in fire and pain. The next thing Dominic clearly remembered was the medical bay of the UNSS Mercy. The left side of his body felt strange, distant, somehow. When he tried to move his arm, nothing happened. "Easy there, Lieutenant," Dr. Patel's familiar voice came from nearby. "The blast took your arm. We've prepped you for a cybernetic replacement, but you need to rest first." Dominic's thoughts immediately went to the alien woman. The survivor, did she? "She's safe," a new voice interrupted. Dominic turned to see a tall, distinguished-looking alien male entering the room, flanked by guards both human and alien. His crystalline crown was larger, more elaborate than the woman's had been. "Thanks to your incredible bravery, Lieutenant Thorne. You saved not only a life today, but quite possibly prevented an interstellar war." The alien's next words hit Dominic like a physical force. "You see, the woman you rescued is Princess Vaeris of the Stellarian Empire. And those who attacked your colony were rebels attempting to assassinate her and frame humanity for the deed." Through the haze of pain medication, Dominic processed this information. He had lost his arm saving an alien princess. It sounded like something from an old romance tale, not real life. Yet here he was. The princess. Vaeris, she spoke English. The alien dignitary smiled. The Stellarians are telepathic, Lieutenant. We speak directly to your mind in whatever language you think in. There is much more you'll need to learn about us, as I suspect you'll be seeing quite a bit more of our people. He glanced meaningfully at Dominic's missing arm. We have some rather advanced prosthetic technology we'd like to offer you, as a small token of our gratitude. As the dignitary spoke, Dominic caught movement at the door. Princess Vaeris stood there, now dressed in flowing robes that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. Their eyes met, and in that moment, Dominic knew his life would never be the same. The attack on New Haven Colony had been meant to spark a war. Instead, it had created something entirely different, a bridge between two civilizations, built on one man's instinctive choice to protect a stranger, regardless of the cost to himself. The Stellarian prosthetic attached to Dominic's shoulder hummed softly as he flexed his new fingers. The arm was a masterpiece of bioengineering, crystalline structures interwoven with synthetic muscle fiber, all encased in a pearlescent material that matched the Stellarian's skin tone. It responded to his thoughts as naturally as his original arm had, though the enhanced strength and sensitivity still surprised him at times. 2 weeks had passed since the attack on New Haven, and the UNSS Mercy had been converted into an impromptu diplomatic vessel. Stellarian medical experts worked alongside human doctors, while diplomatic teams from both species attempted to unravel the complex political web that had led to the attack. Dominic stood at the observation deck, watching the stars streak by. His new arm cast prismatic patterns on the viewport as it caught the light. Behind him, the door whispered open. Your thoughts shine like beacon fires in the dark, Princess Vaeris said softly. She had taken to visiting him during the ship's night cycle, when the diplomatic entourage's demands on her time finally ceased. They're beautiful, but troubled. Dominic turned, still struck by her ethereal presence. The crystalline structures at her temples seemed to pulse gently with their own inner light, responding to thoughts and emotions he could only guess at. Your Highness, he began, but she held up a hand. Please, when we're alone, just Vaeris. You've earned that right. She moved to stand beside him at the viewport. You're wondering about the rebels, aren't you? Among other things, he admitted. The attack was too well coordinated, too precise. They knew exactly when and where to hit us. Someone had to give them that information. Vaeris's expression darkened. You're right, of course. The official story, that these were simply anti-human extremists, is a convenient fiction. The truth is far more dangerous. She turned to face him fully. What do you know about Stellarian succession laws? Only what's in the briefing packets. Your people choose your rulers based on the strength of their telepathic abilities, with the crown passing to the strongest in each generation. Correct. And I. She hesitated, I am different. My abilities go beyond anything seen in generations. Some see this as a sign of progress, of evolution. Others view it as a threat to our traditional power structures. A commotion in the corridor interrupted them. Armed guards, both human and Stellarian, rushed past the observation deck. Moments later, emergency alerts began blaring throughout the ship. Security breach in the medical lab. The announcement echoed through the corridors. All personnel, secure your stations. Dominic's combat training kicked in immediately. He stepped between Vaeris and the door, his new arm automatically reconfiguring into a defensive stance he hadn't even known it was capable of. They're here for the research, Vaeris said urgently. Everything from New Haven, my medical data, the compatibility studies between our species. If they get it. The lights flickered and died, plunging the observation deck into darkness broken only by the stellar display outside and the gentle glow of Vaeris's crown. Emergency power kicked in moments later, casting everything in a red glow. We need to move, Dominic said, already formulating a plan. The observation deck is too exposed. He activated his neural comm, but found only static. Communications are being jammed. I can help with that. Vaeris stepped closer, placing her hand on his Stellarian arm. Instantly, Dominic's mind expanded. He could feel the presence of every person on the ship, their thoughts and movements creating a complex web of information. This is incredible, he gasped, struggling to process the flood of sensory input. Focus, Vaeris instructed. Look for patterns, disruptions in the normal flow. Through their shared awareness, Dominic identified the intruders. Their minds were shielded, appearing as voids in the mental landscape. They were methodically working their way toward the medical lab, neutralizing security as they went. There's something else you need to know, Vaeris said as they moved carefully through the darkened corridors. The compatibility studies weren't just routine science. We discovered something unprecedented: human and Stellarian DNA can be successfully combined. More than that, the resulting hybrid could potentially possess telepathic abilities far beyond anything in our history. The implications hit Dominic like a physical blow. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not just succession, but evolution itself. Someone's afraid of what our peoples might become together. Yes, Vaeris confirmed. And they're willing to start an interstellar war to prevent it. She caught his gaze in the red-tinted darkness. The arm I gave you, it's not just a prosthetic. It's proof that our species can be successfully merged. You're already part Stellarian, Dominic. That's why you can share my telepathic field so easily. Before Dominic could process this revelation, they heard weapons fire ahead. The intruders had reached the medical lab. Through their shared awareness, they could sense the desperation of the defenders as they were systematically overwhelmed. We can't let them destroy that research, Vaeris said. It's not just about politics anymore. It's about the future of both our species. Dominic flexed his crystalline fingers, feeling power surge through the alien technology that had become part of him. He was living proof of what humanity and Stellarians could achieve together. And he would fight to protect that future, whatever the cost. Then let's show them what that future looks like, he said, as they prepared to confront the forces that would keep their peoples apart. Dominic and Vaeris moved as one through the crimson-lit corridors of the UNSS Mercy, their shared telepathic connection giving them perfect awareness of their surroundings. The crystalline structures in Dominic's prosthetic arm pulsed with increasing intensity as they drew closer to the medical lab, resonating with Vaeris's own crown-like formations. 6 hostiles inside, Dominic communicated mentally, still marveling at how natural the telepathic exchange felt. They're destroying the lab systems methodically. Wait, Vaeris's thoughts touched his. Something's wrong. These aren't just rebels, their mental shielding is too sophisticated. Only the Royal Guard has access to technology that advanced. Through their shared consciousness, Dominic felt her shock and betrayal. Someone high in the Stellarian hierarchy had to be involved, someone with access to the Empire's most closely guarded secrets. A burst of weapons fire interrupted their exchange. The intruders had spotted them. Dominic's enhanced arm reacted instantly, projecting a crystalline energy shield that deflected the plasma bolts. The technology responded to his thoughts with increasing sophistication, as if it were evolving with each use. The arm, Vaeris communicated urgently as they took cover. It's not just compatible with your biology, it's adapting, growing. This is what they're afraid of. Dominic felt it too. The crystalline structures were spreading subtly along his shoulder, integrating more deeply with his nervous system. Each moment of connection with Vaeris seemed to accelerate the process. They fought their way into the lab, Dominic's shield protecting them while Vaeris used her telepathic abilities to disorient their attackers. The synchronization between them felt perfect, natural, as if they'd trained together for years rather than met weeks ago. The data core, Vaeris directed, pointing to a crystalline matrix in the center of the lab. All the research is stored there. They haven't reached it yet. But as they approached the core, a new figure stepped out of the shadows. The crystalline crown he wore was elaborate and ancient, marking him as a member of the High Council itself. Councillor Rylan, one of the most conservative voices in Stellarian politics. "My dear princess," he said aloud, his tone dripping with false concern. "How unfortunate to find you consorting with this hybrid abomination. What would your father say?" "He would say that progress cannot be stopped by fear, Rylan," Varys responded, her mental voice resonating with authority. "You're afraid of change, of evolution itself. I'm afraid of the extinction of our pure bloodlines." Rylan's mental projection was so powerful it made Dominic's head ring. "Look at him, already the crystals spread. Soon there will be no difference between Stellarian and human. Our uniqueness will be lost." "Not lost," Dominic broke in, understanding flowing through him with sudden clarity. "Enhanced. Evolution isn't about maintaining purity, it's about adaptation, growth, finding strength in combination." He felt Varys's approval and something more, a deepening of their connection that made his heart race. The crystalline structures in his arm pulsed in sync with her crown. Rylan raised his hand, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with psychic energy. "Then you leave us no choice. The High Council has already voted. These experiments must end, and all evidence must be destroyed, including you both." The attack came from all directions, physical and mental. Rylan's forces opened fire while he himself launched a telepathic assault that would have overwhelmed Dominic's unprepared mind. But he wasn't unprepared, and he wasn't alone. Varys's consciousness merged more deeply with his, their combined mental strength creating a shield as tangible as the energy barrier projected by his arm. The crystalline structures grew more prominent, responding to their shared will. "You see?" Rylan spat. "Already he becomes more Stellarian than human. This is how it begins." "No," Varys countered, her hand finding Dominic's. "This is how we evolve. Together." Their joined minds reached out, pushing back against Rylan's attack. The counselor's eyes widened in shock as his mental barriers began to crack. He had never encountered anything like their combined strength. But before they could press their advantage, emergency bulkheads slammed down throughout the ship. Klaxons blared as the computer announced, "Warning. Unauthorized access to ship systems. Emergency protocols engaged. All sections preparing for emergency space exposure." Rylan's lips curved in a cruel smile. "If we cannot prevent this abomination through legitimate means, then more direct action is required. The UNSS Mercy will be destroyed in an unfortunate accident, taking all evidence of these experiments with it. The tragedy will only serve to heighten tensions between our peoples." The ship shuddered ominously. Through their telepathic connection, Dominic and Varys could feel the panic of the crew as systems began to fail throughout the vessel. They had to make a choice, pursue Rylan and his forces, or save the ship and its crew. Their eyes met, and no telepathy was needed to convey their decision. Some battles would have to wait. Right now, hundreds of lives hung in the balance. As they raced toward the ship's engineering section, Dominic felt Varys's thoughts brush as once more, "Whatever happens, we face it together. The future belongs to those brave enough to embrace change." The crystalline structures in his arm pulsed in agreement, and Dominic realized that their evolution, and the evolution of their peoples, was just beginning. The UNSS Mercy's emergency lighting cast wild shadows as Dominic and Varys raced through the destabilizing ship. Their telepathic connection gave them a shared awareness of the crisis unfolding around them, hundreds of crew members trapped behind malfunctioning bulkheads, life support systems failing deck by deck, and the reactor core approaching critical levels. "Engineering is sealed," Dominic communicated mentally as they reached the main access corridor. "Rylan's people have locked down all conventional entry points." Varys's response carried a mix of determination and rising anger. "They're willing to sacrifice everyone aboard just to maintain their idea of genetic purity. My own people." Her crown crystals flickered with emotion. The ship lurched violently, throwing them against a bulkhead. Through their link, they felt the wave of fear that swept through the crew. Time was running out. There might be another way in, Dominic suggested, his crystalline arm responding to his thoughts by projecting a holographic schematic of the ship. The maintenance tunnels. They're too small for normal access, but we're not limited to normal access anymore, Varys finished, understanding his plan. She placed her hand on his prosthetic arm, and their shared consciousness expanded. The crystalline structures in Dominic's arm had spread further, creating an intricate network across his shoulder and chest. As their minds merged more deeply, he felt the technology responding to their combined will. The crystalline material flowed like liquid, extending their reach and capabilities. They found the maintenance access panel and, with their enhanced strength, pried it open. The tunnel beyond was a tight maze of conduits and power lines, barely large enough for them to crawl through. As they navigated the cramped space, Dominic felt Varys's consciousness brush against a memory, his last moments in the burning research complex on New Haven, when he'd chosen to shield her with his own body. "You didn't even know who I was," her thoughts whispered. "Why did you do it?" "Because it was right," he responded simply. "Human, Stellarian, it doesn't matter. Life is life." They emerged into engineering to find chaos. Emergency force fields flickered erratically, barely containing the plasma venting from damaged coolant lines. The reactor core pulsed an angry red, its containment fields failing. 3 of Ryland's guards spun to face them, weapons raised. But they weren't prepared for what Dominic and Varys had become. Moving in perfect synchronization, they launched a combined physical and telepathic assault. The crystalline technology responded to their shared will, creating barriers and weapons as needed. Through their mental link, Dominic accessed the ship's systems while Varys held off the guards' mental attacks. The sabotage was extensive. Ryland hadn't just wanted to destroy the ship, he'd wanted to make it look like a catastrophic human engineering failure. "The containment field is collapsing," Dominic communicated urgently. "We can't stop it through normal controls." "Then we don't use normal controls." Varys's mental voice was steady. She placed her hand on his crystalline arm again, and together they reached out to the ship's systems in a new way. The crystalline structures in Dominic's prosthetic began to glow, resonating with Varys's crown. Their combined consciousness touched the ship's computer core directly, bypassing the sabotaged controls. Man, machine, and Stellarian technology merged into something entirely new. Warning klaxons died mid-wail. Emergency bulkheads reset, releasing trapped crew members. The reactor core's angry pulse steadied as new containment algorithms took hold. But their victory was short-lived. As the immediate crisis passed, they became aware of a new danger. A massive Stellarian warship had dropped out of hyperspace alongside the Mercy. "The Eternal Dawn," Varys breathed, recognizing her father's flagship. "But how did they find us so quickly?" The answer came in the form of a ship-wide broadcast. Counselor Ryland's voice dripped with false concern. "My Emperor, as I reported, the humans have corrupted your daughter. Even now, she merges their inferior technology with our sacred gifts. The abomination must be cleansed, even if it costs us your only heir." Through their link, Dominic felt Varys's heart break at this ultimate betrayal. Ryland had planned this from the start, not just to destroy the research, but to force a confrontation that would make war between their peoples inevitable. The Eternal Dawn's weapons powered up, targeting systems locking onto the Mercy's vulnerable engineering section. They had saved the ship from destruction only to face an even greater threat. But as Dominic and Varys stood together, their merged consciousness spanning the gap between human and Stellarian, they felt something else: hope. They had proven that their peoples could be more together than they ever were apart. Now they just had to survive long enough to prove it to everyone else. "Your father needs to see the truth," Dominic said, both aloud and mentally. "Not Ryland's lies, not political maneuvering, but what's really happening between our peoples." Varys squeezed his hand, the crystalline structures in his arm pulsing in harmony with her crown. "Then let's show him." All of it. No more secrets, no more fear. Let them see what we can become. As the Eternal Dawn's weapons reached full power, Dominic and Varys prepared to make their stand, not just for their own lives, but for the future of both their species. The true war wasn't between humans and Stellarians, but between those who feared change and those who dared to embrace it. And they were living proof of which side was stronger. The massive form of the Eternal Dawn loomed over the UNSS Mercy, its weapons arrays glowing with deadly purpose. Inside the Mercy's engineering section, Dominic and Varys stood together, their merged consciousness spanning the gap between their species. The crystalline structures that had spread from Dominic's prosthetic arm now formed an intricate lattice across his torso, pulsing in perfect harmony with Varys's crown. Emperor Talon, Ryland's voice echoed through both ships, "Your daughter has been corrupted by human technology. Look how she stands with this hybrid abomination. The sacred purity of our bloodline." "Father," Varys interrupted, her telepathic voice reaching out not just to the Emperor, but to every mind on both ships. "Before you pass judgment, see the truth for yourself." Through their deepened connection, Dominic felt her gathering her strength. The crystalline formations in his arm resonated with increasing power as Varys channeled her unprecedented telepathic abilities. Together, they opened their shared consciousness, broadcasting their experiences to all who could receive them. They showed everything: the attack on New Haven, Dominic's sacrifice, the successful merger of human and Stellarian technology, and the discovery that their peoples could be more together than they ever were apart. They revealed Ryland's plot to destroy the evidence and spark an interstellar war, all in the name of preserving a purity that was really just stagnation. "This is what they fear, Father," Varys projected, her mental voice strong and clear. "Not contamination, but evolution. They fear we will become something new, something stronger than we are now." The crystalline structures throughout the ships, in the Stellarians' crowns, in the technological arrays, and in Dominic's prosthetic, all pulsed in synchronization. The barrier between telepathic communication and technological interface dissolved as human innovation merged with Stellarian gifts. Emperor Talon's response came both verbally and mentally, his presence vast and ancient. "Counselor Ryland speaks of purity, yet he conspires with rebels and saboteurs. He speaks of preservation, yet he would murder hundreds to hide the truth. The truth is corruption." Ryland's mental voice lashed out like a weapon. "Look at what she's become, what they've both become. This hybrid transformation will spread, consuming everything that makes us unique." "No," Dominic projected, stepping forward. "This isn't about losing what makes us unique. It's about growing beyond artificial limitations. Human determination and innovation, Stellarian wisdom and abilities, together we can be more than the sum of our parts." The crystalline network pulsed brighter, and through their shared awareness, Dominic and Varys felt a shift in the consciousness of those around them. The crew of both ships watched in awe as the living proof of their potential stood before them. Ryland must have felt the shift too. With a cry of rage, he unleashed a massive telepathic assault, trying to shatter their connection. At the same time, his loyalists on both ships sprang into action, weapons ready. But they were too late. The bond between Dominic and Varys had grown too strong to break. The crystalline structures that marked their union glowed with blinding intensity as they caught Ryland's attack and turned it back on him. His mental barriers shattered like glass. "Enough." Emperor Talon's command echoed through minds and speakers alike. "I have seen the truth in their memories, felt the potential in their union. Ryland, you and your conspirators are hereby stripped of rank and authority. Guards, take them into custody." As Ryland was led away, still shouting about purity and contamination, the Emperor's consciousness touched Dominic's and Varys's directly. "My daughter always had the strongest telepathic abilities in generations. Now I understand why. She was meant to bridge our peoples, to help us take the next step in our evolution." "Not just me, Father," Varys responded, taking Dominic's hand, flesh and crystalline technology intertwined. "All of us. Together." The Emperor was quiet for a moment, his ancient mind processing the implications of what he'd witnessed. Finally, he spoke again. "Lieutenant Dominic Thorne, you saved my daughter's life at great cost to yourself. Then you helped save hundreds more by stopping Ryland's plot. But your greatest service may be showing us a glimpse of what we can become." The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. With Ryland's conspiracy exposed, both human and Stellarian authorities worked to strengthen their alliance. The research from New Haven was not only preserved but expanded, with new joint programs established to explore the potential of human-Stellarian integration. Dominic's transformation continued, the crystalline structures becoming a permanent part of him. But he wasn't alone, other humans and Stellarians came forward, volunteering to explore this new frontier of evolution. Each successful integration proved that fear of change was the only real threat to either species. Standing on the observation deck of the Eternal Dawn, Dominic watched the stars with new eyes. Vaeris joined him, their consciousness merging as naturally as breathing. Having doubts, she asked, though she already knew the answer. "No," he smiled, the crystalline lattice pulsing softly with his emotions. "Just thinking about that day in the research complex. One choice, one moment of reaching out to help someone different from myself. Changed everything," she finished, her hand finding his. Their merged awareness expanded, taking in the vast potential of the cosmos before them. That's how evolution works, not through fear and isolation, but through connection, through reaching out across the void to find something new. The stars stretched out before them, infinite in their possibility. And in their joined minds, both human and Stellarian, they saw not an ending but a beginning, the first steps on an endless road of discovery, walking together into whatever they might become.